Hi, I'm Melanie, and welcome to Get Out the Urban Vote. I created Get Out the Urban Vote because I was desperately trying to find my voice and use my freedom of speech in a really turbulent time in this country right now. I want to help my people. I want to encourage them to vote. I want them to register, show up, and vote and make a difference. Who are my people? Well, I'm Black American, and my mother is an immigrant from Mexico. My father was the first Black physician in Altadena, California. He put himself through school during the Jim Crow era, and he saw a lot of racism. I do this film in honor of him because he's made me proud to be who I am as a Black American woman. Now, what you don't know about me is that I am smart, resilient, talented, and compassionate. I believe that the education that I worked so hard for and strive to be a perfectionist has equipped me to help my people and animals. But lately I've been really afraid. I've been afraid to speak my mind. I've been afraid to wear certain clothing that expresses my ideas. I've even been afraid to put a placard in my yard, even though people in my neighborhood aren't afraid. I'm afraid to walk my dog. I've been caught up in my home and I needed to get out. I had to do this video. I had to do something. And I'm pleased to find out that this is what I was called to do, to share my story with all of you. Dr. King said we needed to reach one and teach one, and I'm trying to do that through this film. To help me make this video, I have found 3 of the most amazing people. They're Black business owners here in New Mexico. I'll be interviewing retired Brigadier General Raphael Warren, now CEO of Spartan Cybersecurity. I'll be interviewing Teresa Robinson, owner of Graphic Bliss Branding Agency and editor-in-chief of 2 amazing magazines in the community, including Pride and Equality. I'll be interviewing Brian Spurlock of Brian's Photography. He did my headshots and they kicked ass. Together, we're going to talk about issues. We're going to talk about voting. We're going to talk about race. We're going to talk about religion and how all of these things juxtaposed can create a better society. Again, I'm looking for ways to help my people and encouraging them to vote. Get Out the Urban Vote isn't about being a Republican or conservative or liberal or Democrat or the Green Party or an independent. It's neutral. It's about creating a common discourse amongst different people. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to Get Out the Urban Vote. So tell us something about yourself, something awesome and amazing.
Something awesome and amazing. Well, I probably average 4 hours of sleep a night, and I'm working on that. But I'm a busy working mother. I have 3 amazing kids, 3 amazing businesses. Right now, I'm working on a 4th.
Well, I grew up in North Carolina, one of 6. The house I grew up in had no plumbing till about 13 years old. Grew up in a little rural community, so since no one else had plumbing, I didn't really miss it. And it would be a key element to me surviving being in the military. There are those days you're out in the middle of nowhere.
So I have been doing photography for about just over 40 years, about 42 years. It's been a love of my life. Just got into it in the 8th grade and just kind of fell in love with it since then and just never really put the camera down.
I moved here when I was 2 years old from St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. My father, the folklore is, he got a postcard from my aunt who was living here, and he saw a picture of the sunset and was just like, gotta move the family there. I have no idea how we moved from an island to a desert, but there you go. But I love this state.
Probably the first person in my family of 6 to go to college and on beyond that.
I also have been blessed to be able to do a few things on the side, everything from working with the Albuquerque Police Department while I was still doing photography full time, working with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, also being a minister at church and those types of things like that. So my life has been pretty full, so I have no complaints over anything.
I love the chili, I love the food. I love the food, but I also love that there is so much to do here and is so eclectic. I mean, there's just nothing like New Mexico.
My mother is 100 years old. so she did not anticipate having me. I weighed 11 pounds when I was born.
So have you always voted? Why or why not?
Well, I was introduced to voting through the military. So the military tries to develop a young person with an eye to civic responsibility. So that's where I started, and we got time off to go do it. So, you can get a young soldier to do pretty much anything you give him time off to do.
I have always voted. I remember turning 18 and excited that I was going to get to take part in the process. I mean, since I was little, that's what it was about. We had people from the Black community that went through struggles just to get this right. So, I mean, who is it for me to not engage in that? So it's always been an important thing for me to vote.
So I've been voting since 19. I was going to start at 18 when I was legally allowed to, but I wasn't really following politics at all. So I just didn't understand who I would be voting for. So I just really skipped a year. And then when I turned 19, I'm never going to forget that, because I actually looked back and started studying what everybody was doing. I don't remember who the politicians were at that time, but I really just kind of started following and understanding what people are doing. And my vote ever since then has always been towards my beliefs, or what politician best espouses towards my beliefs.
In your opinion, how important is it for people to vote?
I think it's absolutely critical. It appears that as far as let's call it the white vote, it's usually fairly even. That means a block of minority voters can really swing an election. Black and Hispanic groups especially, those are large voting blocks, and they can swing an election. I found myself stunned that Barack Obama got elected, and I felt just a little bit of sadness. When did I lose my hope? I was very late to come to the possibilities that he could win. It was shocking to me.
Frankly, I feel it's important to vote because that's how change happens. You can't sit back and complain of the problems that are happening in this country or even your state and then do nothing about it. The voting is at least a step to get your voice heard. I know it's been discouraging over the past few months hearing about challenges being put up to make that difficult for people. But if anything, that's even why it's more important to fight for that right to vote and make your voice be heard.
So I think it is extremely important that people get out and vote. You hear all the time people complaining about this politician or this politician or this policy or a different policy, but yet they do nothing about it, sitting there hoping that their friend who has a like opinion will be the one who votes. And they're not understanding that more and more people were doing that for a time. I think now we are in an age where people are starting to realize, I'm going to be that person that's going to make that difference. So it is extremely important that you get out and understand the politician. Don't vote for somebody that your friends like or that you just think might be a good person. You really need to look in their background and really understand what this person is about, what their policy is about, what are the people about that support them, and understand what you're doing, not listen to hearsay.
Raphael, in your opinion, how effective have you seen the Black vote?
Well, it was extraordinary with the Barack Obama's ascension to the presidency. It was hard for me to imagine that, but he inspired blacks to vote, and apparently inspired lots of Hispanics to vote for him also. I just couldn't see that coming. I grew up in the South. I had a certain amount of expectations, unexamined expectations, low expectations of what we could do.
So, Teresa, how has your race and ethnicity affected your vote?
Strangely enough, race was never an issue for me when it came to voting. I mean, when it comes down to it, I truly believe when you vote for a candidate, you're voting for the same values that you agree with, that you stand on. And that's what it's always been for me. I will be honest, when Barack Obama was nominated as a Democratic candidate, I couldn't help but feel praise because there was finally a black person that was running for president.
Brian, in your opinion, how effective has your vote been?
So I think effectiveness, or to that effect, I think I've had politicians and people I've voted for in different levels of politics have won, some have not, but I think my vote still helps send a message. So if an election runs close, and even if the politician loses that I voted for, at least I know we were close, or that my vote was part of that count. And then I always have to wonder to myself, did all the other people vote that said they were going to, or were they either afraid to, or so on? So I think everybody can cause an effect on an election if they get out and do what they're supposed to do.
Raphael, you made a very impactful statement that you lacked hope. And my question to you is, what would it have taken for you to have more hope that we could have a black president?
I think the biggest thing would have been an example of someone having gotten closer to that. I'm aware of Shirley Chisholm. I'm aware of Jesse Jackson's foray into that, but those felt so short. It seemed like we had a long ways to go. And it's funny because I am the first African American to serve as a battalion commander in New Mexico National Guard, to make a full colonel, and to be a general in New Mexico National Guard. In the entire history of New Mexico National Guard, I'm the first general, and up till fairly recently, I was the only one to ever achieve battalion command and full colonel. So you don't have to have, but some people, regular people, need an example to inspire their hope, for it to be just a little closer, possible. That makes the difference.
Teresa, do you think it's more important for people of color to vote than other people in the United States?
It's important that everyone votes, but I feel it's extremely important for minorities to vote. When it comes down to it, in order to get skin in the game, to get your voice heard, that's how it starts. And it's important that minorities are telling our elected, who they want to elect, is telling them, we're watching you. If you're telling us that you're going to do stuff for our community, we're watching you. That's why we're voting for you. It starts with that process. But I also believe that while voting is the start, the other things as these minority communities need to do is start putting themselves in those positions. You can't have a conversation about the communities without representation of those communities. So that's also another part that needs to happen along with the voting.
So Brian, tell me, what is your race and or ethnicity, and how have they affected your vote?
So as far as race, you have to go by whatever they put you down as sometimes. So I am labeled as black or African American, even though my family's mixed. So I've got a very diverse family. If you look back through our lineage, it's all over the place, but which is fine. As far as the way that it has affected my vote, I don't know if I've really ever let it play that role. I don't really, when I look at a politician, I don't really look at to see if they're white, black, Hispanic, Native American, or anything else. I strictly go by, what is this person about? What is this person saying? What have they done? You have a lot of people that get up there and say, I'm going to do, but they've been in politics for a long time and they've never done anything.
Raphael, how has your race and or ethnicity affected your vote?
Well, I think growing up in North Carolina, let's be clear, it was racist in North Carolina when I grew up out there. It was institutional racism, obvious. When you look back on the history of North Carolina, being born in 1959. So I have a lens, a filter, where I listen and process things through my ethnicity. I'm sure like others. And I have gotten a chance to achieve a few things in life, and that still stays with me. And it affects how I hear and process what a politician is saying or not saying, what they're doing or not doing, what they're advocating or failing to advocate or address.
Teresa, is your opinion about voting different for state, local, and federal elections?
I feel that it's important, period. Whether it's federal or local, it is the same process. You are listening to candidates telling you what they're going to do for you, and you make your decisions accordingly. I hold my local officials and the candidates that run for office at the same level as federal. So either way, the voting process is important, whether it's local or national. And I definitely, if I had to say, because I live in this community, because I am local, I might put a little bit more on my local officials than I do the federal. Pretty much what candidates promise is going to happen, and then they get voted in, and it's happening in some states but not in others. I've kind of learned to accept that, although I would like to see that change. It's different when you're at a local level. You're pretty much telling your community, this is what I'm going to do. I expect that to happen. If you can make that happen, I expect to see it in your term. So I would say that I might, while I say the process is still the same, it's all about voting. Me personally, I put a little bit more pressure on the local officials because it's my community and I want to see my community do better.
So, Brian, you're a Christian. So tell me, how has Christianity affected your vote?
Absolutely. So race hasn't necessarily affected what I've done, but being a Christian always affects what I do and who I vote for. And again, I go back to what is this person about and who best matches my beliefs. Here's what I believe in. Here's what they believe in. Here's what I don't believe in. Here's what they don't believe in. If those things are closely matched to what I believe in, whether I like the person or not as a person, I vote that way because I know that they're going to at least follow most of the things that I believe. And that's how that part of it has affected me. So like I said, I have left race out of that and just vote by strictly what are my beliefs and my principles.
Raphael, in your opinion, why do you think it's necessary for people of color to vote?
Okay, it's necessary and important because it is your civic duty. It's your first and essential civic duty. And it can change things. It can effectively move politicians, even slow, maybe begrudgingly, but your vote can actually move them, whether they are voted out of office or into office. It is critical that you get involved, that you be heard, and that activism culminates in the vote. That's your power. You must use your power.
Brian, tell me, how would you encourage people of color to vote?
So to encourage people of color to vote, I would still do what I said before, which is we need mentors. We need somebody to explain in our communities where they may not get a lot of TV, they may not be able to afford internet, these types of things like that, to whether it's to go from door to door or have little town meetings or just send several people, like they do the census. They send tons and tons of people out to do the census. Why can't you send somebody out in these communities that you already know aren't going to be exposed to the things everybody else gets to be exposed to help them understand the types of things that's going on, to help them understand issues in their community and issues that affect the minority or people of color communities. And so the way to do that is to get somebody out there who's going to explain, here's the process, here's how it works, here's why it should work, here's how your voice can be heard. So I think the more education we can get, and I'm not talking at a level to where they're going to walk away with a college degree, just enough to understand, the electoral process and understanding the voting process and how to. I mean, I wasn't raised like that. My dad was military. I mean, we grew up on a lot of strange foods that just said peanut butter. So I never had a, silver spoon in my mouth. We grew up poor, so I understand what being poor is like and not understanding some stuff. But every one of us has that right to learn it. Nobody's stopping us anymore from learning anything. So you can go out on your own and learn something. Most people have internet somewhere, whether it's at their house, their friend's house, library, McDonald's, wherever. You can pull up internet somewhere and learn something about the voting process. Educate yourself, if nothing else, to be able to go out and make that vote. But I think it's affected people of color more than anybody because we just don't have that support system in place that can educate us properly on the process of voting and or what the terms and issues are.
Last question, Teresa. If more people of color vote, what would you like to see? What would you hope to see? And what would you expect to see?
Yeah, this is the question that's gonna get me in trouble, possibly. So I'm gonna try to be as passionate but clean with my language. Funny enough, more Black voters coming out is what I would like to see. To learn that percentage is low every election year is disappointing. I'm really hoping that the environment that we're in right now is going to lead that charge to see that percentage go way up this time around. It's something I would like to see. What I hope to see is that more people in the Black community that are taking the charge to vote educate and research at the same time. So I would hope that because of the environment that we're in, that Black voters take a step back and go, this should not be a thing. This should not be a thing. This should not be the person that represents us. So they do a little bit more research and a little bit more education before they go to those polls so they know that they're making the right decision. What I expect is not only follow through of the candidate who wins, but also for the community itself to take part in the process. Like I said before, voting's great. It makes your voice heard. But if you really want to invoke change, we need to become part of the system. We need to start putting people in our city council, in our, and when it comes to deciding when police reform happens, if cities choose to do that they're part of the conversation. We need to start taking the step to be a part of that. We can no longer point fingers and say it's this person's fault when we can take the initiative to make that change ourselves.
Professor and author Ishrat Manji defines moral courage as doing the right thing in the face of your fears. To be a change maker, facing fear is non-negotiable. When you vote, you become a change maker. Everyone involved in this video is a change maker. Be one too. Create change and register. Show up and vote.